All right, welcome back to another Daily Stew. We are the Right Stew Podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
I'm Brian Wright still.
Still Brian Wright, the one and only. So, a lot of things to talk about today. So, the first one, we talked about the Golden Net Bat the other day. I was clearly opposed. Brian could be bought in. But Rob Manfred recently came out and said, hey, this isn't happening for some time, the foreseeable future. So clearly he's been listening to the Right Stew podcast. He's getting his
At
information
least half
from
of it. He's listened to half of it because I could be sold that this is forward looking, make the fan experience better. Let's not worry so much about records. But obviously, the overall opinion was not on my side.
Yeah. So you were wrong. I was right.
Yes.
Chalk one up for the good guys. But realistically, and we had this conversation in the past couple of days, and you posed a great question. You said, Paul, if this was baseball was a brand new sport and this rule was in there, how would you feel about it? And the answer is great. I think it's a cool rule. But for the sanctity of the game, and I sound like such an old fart, but for the sanctity of the game,
get off my lawn.
hey, it just doesn't make sense, right? And we kind of discussed that. So go back and listen to the Golden Net Bat podcast we did, dive in a little further about that. So that's one thing. We talked about Bill Belichick yesterday coming to UNC. At the time, we thought, hey, just kind of a ploy, maybe just kind of shopping himself around. But some more news has come out where, hey, maybe there is some legs. Maybe there's something behind this. And Brian, we were discussing this, and you brought up kind of an interesting point and kind of a different perspective on it.
You know, the things I read that was reported today were that basically he would come in, his son Stephen would be the coach in waiting. They have kind of a model that they're doing at Stanford and some other places where they're going to have a GM in place that's going to kind of handle the NIL. You still got your recruiting coordinator. You know, Deion Sanders has kind of made the example that you don't have to travel all over the country, right, to get players. Kind of the old school method that, you know, this guy's going to be on the road, 280 days a year. That's not what Deion does. I mean, you recruit a few high school players that have a chance to play as freshmen. You work that NIL deal and make sure there's money available if you want those guys. And your freshmen better have a chance to play early or they're gone anyway, right? No freshman wants to come in red shirt because they're looking, again, about 6 months into the future. Yeah. And then after, say, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe there's some type of stipulation about how well he has to do. But then he has his son in waiting. And I think that's kind of maybe part of the deal where he's got to, hey, I do well. I hand this over to my son. I've got my coaching staff in place, and this kind of transitions, and maybe he is just going to set up his son for a future and, transition to this next place in life.
So Belichick is taking very much the NFL pro approach to the college game, right? Bringing in a GM specifically to handle, because I think that's a lot of what's driving coaches out of the game right now is they don't want to deal with that. That's not why they do it. That's not why they love coaching, not to deal with somebody asking for more money or their agent or whoever it is asking for more money.
Hey, Paulie, I think we can relate to that though, right? Not necessarily the money part, but the thing that we enjoy about coaching is on the field coaching. Yeah. Everything else is kind of the part that you don't like to do, dealing with parents at different times. And we got really good parents, but dealing with parents at different times and dealing with different situations. The thing we'd like to do is coaching on the field. And it feels like he may be setting himself up to be able to do that and kind of have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah, that's fair. That is why we coach, because we love investing in the young men. We love sharing what we've learned from other people and what we know, helping people grow and see them grow and progress. Winning ball games is fun, right? Not always the ultimate, but winning is fun. But you're right, the other stuff, the scheduling and the dealing with money and all that kind of stuff. And again, we've got great parents on the team we coach, but we've seen other circumstances and heard other stories where it's not always that way. So yeah, maybe he's setting it up and really doing some good things over there. And maybe this is the archetype and what it looks like, the blueprint moving forward in college football. You get somebody in there who's like you said, the GM. It's not NIL coordinator. It's not recruiting coordinator. It's something in between that handles kind of everything.
I think the takeaway is this isn't just hey, I'm getting my name out there for NFL coaches. The
Yeah.
takeaway that I'm reading now and kind of changing my opinion, and honestly would change my opinion if I was a kid that was being recruited, is this isn't a gimmick. This is, hey, I want to come in and coach for a few years. I've got a ton of knowledge that I can give back.
Yeah.
Honestly, the model now in college is a lot closer to NFL than it was previously, right? No,
Yeah.
previously, you go out and you recruit a bunch of high school kids. Now you recruit a handful of high school kids. You hit portal kids, JUCO kids, and you bring in the rosters are getting down to 105, so there's a cap. So you're not going to have these 125-man rosters, and it feels
Yeah.
like the college
It's
game is
really
getting
cool.
closer to.
And that's kind of who Belichick always was. He's kind of one step ahead of the game. And,
Yeah,
and some of what we found was like he might have been cheating a little bit, but with Deflategate and some of the
it
video
worked.
stuff, and, it's only cheating if you get caught, I guess. But it is revolutionary, and it could realistically change how we view college football. You mentioned junior college. Another local story here: Lewisburg, out of Lewisburg, North Carolina, in the junior college national championship game today, up in Chicago. So good luck to the Lewisburg Hurricanes. So go Canes. And last thing today, so it's championship games for college football today. So we're going to run through some of those, give our picks, and then see what the consequences of those games are. So the first one's the Big 12, number 16 Iowa State versus number 15 Arizona State. Who you got, Brian?
I'm going to go Arizona State. I was obviously Coach Dillingham went from last year. I think he was like 3-9 overall to potentially getting Arizona State, which I think for a number of years has always been considered somebody who had talent. Right? They've had a lot of big recruits that went other places. That
Tony
ultimately
Dungy
ended
was
up
there.
in the NFL.
Herm Edwards was there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had Jalen Daniels, I think, was there. There's some really talented players that were, took a pit stop to Arizona State, and this year went from 3-9 last year to obviously getting themselves in a chance. So it's hard. I've heard him speak. It's hard. There's guys that when you hear them speak, you instantly kind of like them, and you
Yeah.
instantly feel like, hey, he gets it, right? And I think it's just, hey, forward looking. Hey, I remember one of his conversations was, hey, we got to get more money if we want to keep these guys, we want to keep these players in place. We need to find more money to pay them, and
Yeah.
it's like how he communicates as a sports guy. Kind of appreciate the straightforward conversation. Hey, I'm going Arizona State for no other reason than I
Okay.
like Coach Dillingham.
So I'm gonna go Arizona State as well. The guy from me across the street, couple houses down, has a big Iowa State thing in his front yard. He's had it up there all year, so they've had a good year. He's proud of that. The other thing about Arizona State, so they're in Tempe, Arizona. So I lived in Phoenix and Tempe for for a bit of my life for spring training and baseball. I don't know how you go on a recruiting trip to Tempe and just don't love it. It is.
And come back.
It is one of my favorite cities. I love the Phoenix metro area. It's beautiful, great weather, great things to do outdoor. Like it's if you've been out there, I mean it does get hot, but it gets hot everywhere.
It's dry.
I mean I don't know.
It's
So
dry heat.
personally I don't know why like Arizona State hasn't had better programs historically outside of like really baseball being the kind of carrying the load there. So I'm gonna go Sun Devils as well. That's where I wanted to go to school as a kid because that was the program back in the day.
Oh, really?
Next we got a couple top five matchups. Texas versus Georgia for the SEC championship game. And let me preface the Big 12 game. That's a win and in to the CFP. Whoever wins that's in, the other is out. Texas, Georgia, both of these teams, whether they win the conference and whoever the loser, will still fall in that top 12. So a little less at stake here. But who do you got, Brian?
Well, it's interesting that Georgia was so close to last week getting beat by Georgia Tech. And all of a sudden, the narrative around that was if they get beat by Georgia Tech and then don't win the SEC championship, they're out, right? And they won by 2 points, and there were some debatable calls with the OT situation. So,
yeah,
Georgia Tech feels like Georgia feels like they may not be quite as. I mean, we're splitting hairs, but maybe not quite as talented as Texas. It feels like Kirby Smart probably is the best coach in college football, and I tend to go with the best college coach right now. And a lot of times, whenever you're picking games in the NFL, you go best coach and best quarterback. And the quarterback at Georgia has been really good at times, but he's also been kind of average at times. and you got Quinn and you got young Manning down there at Texas. It's going to be a good game, but I'm probably going to give the edge slightly to Georgia. I think the game is actually in Atlanta, so it's SEC home country. There's going to be a lot of Georgia fans, probably a
Yeah.
lot of Texas fans, but I'm going Georgia.
Yeah, so definitely in Atlanta. I think that's always been a huge advantage for those Georgia, that maybe Alabama a little bit. 'Cause those tend to be the teams in there. Personally, I like Texas. They're a 3-point favorite. Not saying they'll cover the spread, but I think I like Texas. They're just solid top to bottom, good offense, good defense. I got the Longhorns. So
Split on that one.
next
Okay.
game, number 1 Oregon versus number 3 Penn State for the Big Ten championship. Again, both these teams are going to be in. Oregon 12-0, Penn State 11-1. What do you think?
Well, it's hard for me. First of all, it feels like Penn State's always come up a little bit short. It's hard not to love the whiteout. They do a great thing from a producing really good NFL players. Obviously, we're known as linebacker U at one point. Barkley obviously went there. His backup played in the NFL. So really talented historically. But Dan Lanning at Oregon, man, you listen to him speak. He's a guy that like he could be in like Rocky movies and stuff. He feels like he's motivating. He's telling the truth. He's inspiring, and I think you got to be those things as a college coach. You obviously got to know your X's and O's to be good, but being able to get the best out of your players, he feels like a guy who gets the best out of his players, and they're not, even though they're number one, everybody thinks the SEC team is going to win the national championship. But for this game right here, I expect Oregon to take that step forward and win it. Even though I think both of these teams are clearly in.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Oregon's going to win this one, and then who knows about the CFP later on in the month and into January. But I'm excited to watch that one. And I've never been up to Oregon, but I love the green. I don't love all of the uniforms. I like to see
You're
just
the get off my
let's
lawn
narrow it
guy.
down. Let's narrow it down. Let's have a uniform, not like 12. Like
Oh, they got at least 12. Nike, obviously, that Nike money with the NIL, it seems real.
yeah.
And they get
And
really
that's my
good
thing.
players.
Like if it's the old adage about quarterbacks. Well, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have 1 quarterback. If you got 12 uniforms, you don't have one. Again, that's me old. Again, I'm just showing myself to be an old fart today, apparently. And I know the kids. The kids have
Dude, they love it.
state
You know
uniforms.
they love it, dude. With
I don't know.
silver
When I was
helmets
18,
too.
I didn't
Yeah.
care about. I didn't care about. I just wanted to go play. But again, it is pretty cool to get all that swag. So again, I got Oregon as well. So we agree on 2 of these. The last one and the one with the biggest CFP implications, uh, Clemson versus SMU. So Clemson, number 17, took a big loss last week to South Carolina, which I think if they win that, kind of solidifies them and gets them in. SMU right now is number 8. They're locked into the CFP. If SMU wins, clearly they're in. Here's the real conversation. If Clemson beats SMU, then there's some debate on whether it's Alabama or SMU that stays in the top 12. So first of all, Brian, who do you got in the game? Are you Clemson or SMU?
As a NC State fan, because we've been so mostly down, up, mostly down, you find yourself picking another ACC team, and obviously Clemson has represented that.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me not to like Dabo as a person, as a recruiter. It's hard for me not to pull for him, and so my heart is telling me Clemson. I think it's kind of bizarre, even though we got 12 teams now. It's kind of bizarre that really Clemson loses last minute to South Carolina, and all of a sudden, if they beat SMU, they're not in, right? And so it's really one of those things where if Clemson wins last week and beats South Carolina, and then I don't think this game has the same implications, right? Because all of a
I
sudden
think
Clemson,
Alabama's out. Yeah, I think
yeah,
Alabama's out.
yeah, Alabama is out, and it doesn't matter who wins this game. I still don't think it should matter. I think if Clemson win, SMU should get in at 12. But obviously everybody doesn't agree with me on that.
Yeah. So I'll give you. So I'm a big Clemson football guy. I'm picking Clemson to win. That's all heart right there. I think SMU is actually the favorite. Yeah, the 2.5 point favorite, which doesn't mean a lot. It's in Charlotte, which definitely gives Clemson an advantage. I know a lot of people who are going to the game tonight. They're going to freeze their tails off, but they're going to be out there. So I like Clemson in the game just from a personal standpoint, and honestly for the drama of it, I'd like to see how that rolls out. So they spoke to so Reese Davis was interviewing the college football president last week, or the college football committee, and he asked, "Is like, hey, is this so Alabama, Miami? Is this set in stone?" And they're essentially like, "Yeah, there's no more data points. So this is we have nothing else we can." So Alabama is the last team in, and then they kind of broached that topic, but didn't really get into what it would look like. And a couple of the key points they brought up, it's always quality wins, strength of schedule, that sort of thing. And strength of schedule, it kicked Florida State in the butt last year, right? They're undefeated, but we're the 5th team. And as a player, you can only play who's in front of you.
That's right.
Like you can't, like it's hard to say like, well, this is our conference. This is who I have to play. And then you're out of conference. You schedule out of conference games 3 and 4 years ahead of time.
Well, and I
And
would
you
say
don't know what that's going to look like from year to year. A team could be up or down, and
I
and
would
maybe
just
it's
add one caveat to that. The SEC is still clearly the best football conference, but the gap is not how it's made out to be. It's not
yeah.
SEC way up here, and then everybody else is, or the Big Ten, or the Big Ten's right here, and then the ACC and Big 12 are off the screen, right? The gap is more narrow than that. I mean, the SEC again still clearly is the best, but the scores last week and really, even though over the entire season isn't really an indicator of this huge gap. There's a bigger gap in basketball than there is in football.
Here we go.
Yeah. There's a bigger gap in basketball than there is in football. And so if it's set, it's set. I'm going Clemson, pulling for Clemson, and the ACC gets one in, and I'll pull for Clemson.
All right, so those are our picks. It looks like we agree on 3 of the 4. The Georgia-Texas game is something that we'll be watching, and we'll go head-to-head on that one. But otherwise, an exciting sports day. Hey, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Make sure you comment, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear that and see what you guys are thinking. And then also make sure you subscribe, follow, and share. We appreciate all that you guys have done in this kind of early stage of this podcast journey for Brian and I. So thanks again, and we look forward to bringing you some content again soon.
Go Pack! Out!